I chased Isabelle Reed for 6 years. I took a knife for her, got hurt for her, but she absolutely despised me. When I got a second chance at life, I voluntarily gave up on her when the Reed and Kane families proposed our arranged marriage. I gave the opportunity to my stepbrother, Frank. Everyone thought I was just playing hard to get, including Isabelle. Her delicate brow furrowed, a faint, mocking smile on her lips. I said, seriously, I'm not in love with Isabelle Reed anymore. Isabelle froze, her eyes trembling. What did you just say? I only found out that Isabelle was in love with my stepbrother, Frank, after we were married. She was always cold and distant with me. Only when she saw Frank would the corners of her mouth lift in a slight smile. Our marriage felt like a pool of stagnant water. It wasn't until I was on my deathbed that the water was finally stirred. Not because of me, though, because of Frank. Frank and his wife weren't getting along. He often called Isabelle for help. A single call from him was all it took for Isabelle to rush out in the middle of the night to see him, time and time again. This led to a huge fight between us. Isabelle, have you forgotten? I'm your husband. Her expression was calm, her thin lips barely moving. Larry Kane. If it weren't for you, I would have been the one marrying Frank. He wouldn't be living a life like this. Legally, you're my husband. But in my heart, Frank will always be the only one. I'd been in love with Isabelle Reed since I was 16. I pursued her relentlessly. She was known as the school's untouchable ice queen. Even though I thought I was handsome, confident, and accomplished, she wouldn't give me the time of day. Then, when I was 22, the Reed and Kane families decided on an arranged marriage. Because I was the true heir of the Kane family, and Frank was just my stepmother's son, I had the right to choose. I had always loved Isabelle, so I agreed to the marriage. If I had refused, Frank would have been the one to marry her. Isabelle and Frank's constant contact enraged Frank's wife, Jenna. Jenna kidnapped me and Frank. Forced to choose between us, Isabelle saved Frank. I died under Jenna's knife. When I woke up again, I was back at age 22. It was the night before the marriage to Isabelle was to be finalized. Today was Isabelle's birthday. In my past life, I had planned to officially confess my feelings to her today. Isabelle clearly didn't like me, yet she invited me to her birthday party. The real reason was that she wanted Frank to be there. I had chased Isabelle for 6 years, and she was utterly sick of me. Only now did I understand that she was sick of me because the person she truly liked was right by my side. She didn't want even a hint of a rumor about us to make Frank misunderstand. And there I was, stubbornly pursuing her. Isabelle invited a lot of people to her birthday party. It was held at the Reed family estate. I overheard Isabelle's best friend, Irene, teasing her. So that simp Larry Kane is coming today, huh? Isabelle, aren't you afraid Frank will get the wrong idea if you invite Larry? A smile played on Isabelle's lips. Frank's too timid. He wouldn't dare come alone. If his stepbrother doesn't come, he won't either. So, she only invited me for Frank's sake. Irene then asked her, Isabelle, why don't you just tell Larry you're in love with Frank? Isabelle thought for a moment before replying, I can't. Frank is shy and kind. I'm worried that if Larry finds out I like Frank, he'll bully him. Hearing her words, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. I skirted around Isabelle and walked toward a larger group of people. I grabbed a few pieces of cake and a glass of juice and sat down with some friends. Isabelle was tall and slender, dressed in a black, bespoke pantsuit. Her face was cold, her delicate features framed by a pair of sharp, narrow eyes. Her gaze fell on me. Isabelle's small circle of friends gathered together. Within our social circle, everyone knew I was in love with Isabelle. The fact that I was chasing her was common knowledge. I never thought there was anything shameful about pursuing someone you like. Before my father passed away, he told me to always fight for what I want with everything I have. So I liked Isabelle and I pursued her. Irene's voice wasn't loud, but it was just loud enough for me to hear. How long do you guys bet Mr. Kane will cling to Isabelle today? Another voice piped up. Is that even a question? He'd stick to her like glue if he could. Isabelle glanced at me, her expression cold. There was even a hint of disgust. If the old me had seen that look, my heart would have ached. Now, seeing her, I felt nothing at all. The disgust in Isabelle's eyes only faded when Frank appeared. After a brief look at her, I turned my gaze away. Frank and I had always kept our distance, never having any major fights or conflicts. But behind my back, he had been plotting against me for a long time. He knew perfectly well that I loved Isabelle, but he deliberately got close to her, making her fall for him. Ever since we were young, I could feel a subtle rivalry from Frank. But he never dared to bring it out into the open, because I was the only true heir of the Kane family. Isabelle's gaze softened. Her once gloomy expression relaxed. Before we got married in my past life, I never paid attention to Isabelle and Frank's relationship. Isabelle had a camera. When we were 18 on high school graduation day, all the students were taking pictures on the campus quad. I smiled and asked Isabelle if she could take a picture of me. Isabelle paused for a moment, then nodded. Sure. Have Frank join you. I didn't think much of it and called Frank over. I thought that Isabelle agreeing to take my picture meant she had some feelings for me, because I had overheard Isabelle telling Irene that she was going to take a picture of the person she liked at the graduation ceremony. Isabelle had turned down everyone else's requests for photos, but she agreed to mine. After we were married, I discovered that every photo in that camera was of Frank. In the picture we took together at graduation, I had been cropped out. The photo was just of Frank. When I found that picture, my nose stung and my body trembled slightly. Isabelle didn't have to like me, but why did she have to use me to get close to Frank? The gifts from Frank were carefully put away by Isabelle. Gifts from everyone else were piled up and casually tossed in a storage room. In my past life, I had spent a great deal of effort designing a pair of cufflinks myself, then polishing them by hand. Their final destination was the Reed family's storage room. Today, I didn't prepare any gift. She didn't like me, so she definitely wouldn't like any gift I gave her. The party was drawing to a close. Isabelle started cutting the cake, surrounded by a crowd. When she made a wish, she looked up. Her gaze fell on Frank. As she looked away, her eyes met mine for a fleeting moment. Her expression immediately turned cold. I gave a slight, cold smile and looked away. Amid a chorus of cheerful well wishes, I left. Back at the Kane estate, I threw out everything in my room that was related to Isabelle. When Mrs. Chun saw me packing everything up, she asked, "Young master, are you sure?" I nodded. "Yes, I'm sure. All of this and this too, throw it all away." The box was full of things. Isabelle's completed homework, her award certificates. There were even gifts she had given me casually, which I had treated like treasures. She was generous, casually giving me a watch with a 7-figure price tag. Thinking of that watch, I paused. "Wait, Mrs. Chun, leave the watch. This watch was pretty valuable. Just because I didn't like her anymore didn't mean I had a problem with money." I took the watch and went to a luxury shop to sell it. The clerk examined it carefully, his eyes lighting up. "Mr. Kane, are you sure?" I nodded. "I'm sure." I signed the form and the watch was sold secondhand. I had to shamelessly ask Isabelle for this watch as a birthday gift. I noticed Mrs. Chun hadn't thrown the stuff away. She just put it in the storage room. I sighed. I guess the image of me being in love with Isabelle was too deeply ingrained in everyone's mind. Even Mrs. Chun didn't believe I would give up so easily. After all, it was 6 years, not 6 days. Giving up on Isabelle was easier than I thought. I carried the box myself and threw it into the dumpster outside the mansion. Just as I tossed it, a heavy rain began to fall. After I showered, Mrs. Chun knocked on my door. "Larry, Miss Reed is here." I paused for a moment. "I know, Mrs. Chun." When I went downstairs for a glass of water, I found Isabelle still sitting there. Besides her was Irene. Frank stood there hesitantly, head down, nervously fiddling with the hem of his shirt. "Isabelle, Irene, thanks for bringing me back. I'll go get my brother now." Isabelle frowned slightly. "Don't bother," Irene said in a teasing tone. "Oh, Frank, don't you get it? The person our Isabelle wants to see isn't your brother." The implication was clear. The person Isabelle wanted to see was Frank. I slowly walked into the living room and took a sip of water. I glanced at them, finished my water, and turned to leave. Frank called out my name. Larry. Isabelle's here, aren't you going to sit for a bit? I stopped and looked back, smiling faintly. No, you go ahead and entertain them. After seeing me, Isabelle's expression was nothing but cold. She said, no need to entertain. I'm leaving soon anyway. I went back to my bedroom. A short while later, I heard faint crying from the hallway. Isabelle was gripping his arm tightly. Her usually cold eyes were filled with intense love. Her voice was restrained, holding back emotion. Frank, you obviously like me, so why are you pushing me towards him? Frank's voice was laced with a soft sob. Isabelle, my brother likes you.
I'm scared.
Isabelle's emotions surged. Scared of what? Frank looked pitiful and vulnerable. I'm scared my brother will stop liking me. I'm scared if he finds out you like me, he'll bully me. Isabelle sighed softly. He won't. Be with me and I won't let him bully you. Hearing Isabelle's words, a cold smile tugged at my lips. From the moment Frank entered the Kane family and took our name, I had never said a word against him, let alone bullied him. He knew I liked Isabelle, yet he would say ambiguous things to her to tarnish my name. What a pair of star-crossed lovers. I turned and went back to my room. I opened all my social media apps and blocked Isabelle's accounts. Just when I stopped liking Isabelle, she started appearing in my life more frequently. Isabelle and her friends had a weekly get-together. The location of my own reunion with some old classmates happened to be the same as theirs. We ran into each other in the elevator. She looked at me, her eyes filled with displeasure and disgust. Irene chimed in with a snide remark. Well, Mr. Kane followed us all the way here. Your intel is pretty good. I smiled back. You give yourself way too much credit. Why would I be chasing you? Irene said sarcastically, of course you're not chasing me. You're here for Isabelle, right? A moment later, Isabelle's expression turned icy. Her tone was a warning. Larry Kane, I'm discovering you have a really thick skin.
He stared at her coldly.
Isabelle Reed, I'm discovering you're a real narcissist. I was on the elevator first. If anyone's stalking, it's you two stalking me. The elevator reached our floor. Isabelle squinted and gave me a sidelong glance. There was 1 week left until the announcement of our arranged marriage. This time, I wouldn't choose Isabelle. After being reborn, I often found myself thinking back to high school. I started catching traces of Isabelle's feelings for Frank. The school organized an outdoor field trip. I slipped and fell down a small hill. Someone ran to get a teacher and the school nurse. Isabelle arrived before them. She looked nervous, a thin layer of sweat on her forehead. When she saw me, she let out a sudden sigh of relief. She turned and asked the student who had gone for help, "Didn't you say a Kane boy fell?" The student was a bit confused and nodded. "Yeah, Larry Kane fell." Irene arrived shortly after and said to Isabelle, "Isabelle, the one who fell was Larry Kane, not Frank." Isabelle's crush on Frank had started back then. She had liked Frank for as long as I had liked her. A week later, on the day of the official announcement of the Reed-Kane marriage, I was late. My tardiness shocked everyone. Some people started speculating that Isabelle would lose her temper on the spot and reject the marriage. I smiled slightly. Sorry, I'm late. The banquet officially began. Looking at the exquisitely beautiful woman in front of me, my past life flashed before my eyes like a sped-up film. When I looked at her again, I said, "I'm withdrawing from this marriage." Her expression remained indifferent. The crowd turned to look at me in astonishment. Irene's tone was mocking. "Larry Kane, playing hard to get, are we?" I said seriously, "I'm not in love with Isabelle Reed anymore. That's why I'm withdrawing from the marriage." Isabelle's head snapped up, a flicker of panic in her eyes. Frank came to my side and whispered, "Larry, haven't you always loved Isabelle? Don't be rash." I turned to him, looking down at him. "I did love Isabelle Reed, but I don't love her anymore. Do you understand?" Leaning closer to Frank, I gave a small smile. "Frank, don't you like her? You've said quite a few bad things about me to her, haven't you?" As I spoke, I watched the color drain from Frank's face. He quickly regained his composure, his eyes welling up with tears. Isabelle's brow furrowed tightly as she stepped in front of Frank, shielding him. She looked at me with the same indifferent gaze. Her tone was slow and deliberate. Larry Kane, your love has caused me a great deal of trouble. A man should have some self-respect. Irene, standing beside Isabelle, exclaimed in shock, is Larry serious? Did what you said push him too far? Did he really give up on you? I snorted softly, meeting Isabelle's eyes. My voice was firm. Isabelle, I said I really don't love you anymore. Don't worry, I won't bother you again. Isabelle suddenly trembled, her pupils contracting sharply. In that split second their eyes met, Isabelle saw Larry's gaze. It was calm and resolute. The emotions that used to be there were gone. The change unsettled her, especially when Larry said he didn't love her anymore. The words hit her heart with a resounding thud. A faint, tingling sensation, like a weak electric current, spread through her, making her numb. Felt like her heart was being squeezed tightly. Isabelle frowned. Larry's gaze felt familiar, as if she had seen it somewhere before. Isabelle shook her head, dismissing the thought. The person who saved her brother all those years ago was Frank. Couldn't have been Larry. I looked at the Isabelle in front of me. She was more mature and composed than she was 8 years ago, having shed her youthful immaturity. Falling for her was instantaneous, giving up on her took a lifetime. The year after my father passed away, my mother remarried. I spent a whole night crying at his grave on the mountain. The sky was dark, and it was cold. Isabelle stood silently behind me. Are you done crying? It's dark. I'll take you down the mountain. I stopped crying. The second time I saw her was at the hospital. I was a match for her 8-year-old brother. I was wearing a mask. She cried and begged me to save her brother. I thought that by saving her brother's life, she might come to like me. If not like me, at least not hate me. But no, she still liked Frank. Last night, I suddenly found a bracelet I had missed. It was the good luck charm bracelet she gave me before I underwent the transplant surgery for her brother. I was about to take it out and return it to her. Suddenly, Frank grabbed my hand, positioning his body between me and Isabelle. Isabelle, you asked me for an answer, didn't you? I'll tell you now. I love you. I don't want to give you up to my brother anymore. Isabelle seemed to be in a daze for a moment. Her voice was slightly hoarse as she mulled it over. Okay. Before the arranged marriage with the Reeds, my mother had told me, whether we went through with the marriage or not, the Kane family fortune would be mine. The marriage was just a way to maintain the relationship between the two families. Neither the Reeds nor the Kanes needed the marriage to enhance their power. But the marriage could serve as a check on each other. I raised my wine glass. Congratulations, sister-in-law. The thing Isabelle Reed had sought her entire life was finally hers. Isabelle was stunned, but there was no joy on her face, because I loved Isabelle. I worked hard to keep up with her, raising my score by 122 points in the final 100-day countdown to the college entrance exams. After the exams, I was just 1 point shy of her score and got into the same university. After graduation, I followed her to a job at the Reed Corporation. I ran into Isabelle's assistant while taking the elevator to her office. Mr. Wu's expression was hesitant and complex. Mr. Kane, Ms. Reed said you're not allowed in her office. I smiled and asked him, anything else? Mr. Wu took a deep breath. She also said to stop bringing her breakfast. You should go downstairs. I nodded. I'm not here to bring breakfast. I'm here to resign. Since I ran into you, could you please give my resignation letter to Ms. Reed? Mr. Wu took the letter from me, skeptical. After reading the black and white text, he looked up at me with surprise. I raised an eyebrow. I'm serious. Please give it to your boss. Mr. Wu went up to the 22nd floor, and I went back the way I came. Half an hour after returning to my desk, I received the approval for my resignation. The design department employee, Larry Kane, was approved to resign. Mr. Wu had always been efficient. When they found out I was leaving, my colleagues threw me a farewell party. After a few drinks, I went to the restroom. As luck would have it, I ran into Isabelle. I instinctively tried to avoid her, but her peripheral vision caught me. Larry Kane. When she said my name, My heart skipped a beat. What rotten luck. To run into her again. When you want to see her, you can't. When you don't, she just appears. I let out a soft hum and walked out confidently. She didn't say anything else. After washing my hands, I was about to leave. Isabelle suddenly spoke. What are you doing here? I pointed to the private room. A get-together with colleagues. A party with your employees. As I turned away, she said, get home early. I didn't say anything and went back to the room. After completing all the paperwork, I officially resigned. The moment I stepped out of the Reed Corporation, I deleted Isabelle's contact information. When I got back to the Kane estate, my grandmother immediately pulled me aside for a chat. Larry, sweetie, Grandma has a friend. Her granddaughter is very pretty. Would you like to meet her? I chuckled softly. My grandmother's eyes crinkled into a line. Is that a yes? I shook my head. Oh, come on, just meet her once. I promise, if you don't like her, Grandma won't force you. It's good for you young people to connect. My grandmother never liked Frank and his mother. But as long as they didn't cross any lines, she wouldn't say much. My grandmother suddenly sighed. You still can't get over that Isabelle girl, can you? I smiled. Grandma, I really don't like her anymore. My grandmother's rough hand stroked my head, her tone gentle. Grandma has seen a lot in her life. You would have a hard time with her. To be blunt, she probably likes Frank. Sigh, that girl has no taste. I playfully whined to my grandmother. Grandma, I really don't like her anymore. I'll meet your friend's granddaughter. But if we don't click, you can't push me into any more blind dates. I want to go to the overseas branch to learn, is that okay? My grandmother's eyes narrowed, a smile on her lips. Yes, of course. We met at a tea house. It was a popular spot for business meetings. Secluded and quiet. I recognized Lily at a glance. She recognized me too. We chatted for a bit and got along well. Neither of us was looking to get married, so the conversation flowed easily. Before leaving the tea house, we ran into Isabelle and Irene. Irene let out a jeer. Well, you followed us all the way here. And here I thought you'd actually given up. Lily slowly walked up from behind me. She stood by my side, raising an eyebrow. Who's this? She asked. I smiled and introduced her. That's Isabelle Reed, my sister-in-law. Isabelle's eyes flickered, and she froze for a moment. Irene was stunned too. They never expected me to introduce her that way. I said, don't be so full of yourselves. Isabelle's mother was always good to me. Even though I didn't like Isabelle anymore, I still kept in touch with her mother. Soon it would be her mother's birthday. I had someone custom order a watch from abroad. I had felt a mother's love from her. On the day of her birthday, I gave the gift to my grandmother to deliver. I didn't go. Every year for her mother's birthday, I had been exceptionally attentive. In the evening, I received a call from Isabelle. I had deleted her number but hadn't blocked it. Larry, it's my mom's birthday today. She asked me to call and see if you're coming. I declined. No, I can't. Please wish your aunt a happy birthday for me. Isabelle was surprised when she didn't see Larry. She asked her mother. Her mother told her, oh, you mean Larry. Larry said he had something to do and couldn't make it. He had the old Mrs. Kane bring me a watch. It's quite beautiful. Isabelle paused, then nodded. She called Larry. Larry had always been diligent in pleasing her mother. He would find excuses to come to their house every few days to bring her mother skincare products and supplements. Knowing he wasn't coming, Isabelle felt something quietly slipping away. She used her mother as an excuse to invite Larry to the birthday party. Larry refused and even changed how he addressed her mother. He used to call her mom with every other word. Her mother was happy about it. She had lost a son, and Larry had donated bone marrow to him and lost his own father at a young age. Although her son had passed away in the end, her mother still treated Larry like her own son. When Isabelle heard Larry call her mother auntie, she was slightly lost in thought. It wasn't until Larry cheerfully said he had to go that Isabelle snapped back to reality. My father's grave was very close to Isabelle's brother's. When I went to pay my respects to my father, I also visited her little brother's grave. Her brother was a well-behaved, adorable little boy. When I donated bone marrow for him, he was the one comforting me. He puckered his little lips and blew on my hand. Brother, Mommy said if you blow on it, it won't hurt. I'll blow on it for you so it won't hurt. He also took out a nearly melted milk candy from his pocket for me. If you eat candy, the medicine won't be bitter. A candy that was almost melted like that, you could tell he had been saving it for a long time, reluctant to eat it. Before the surgery, he secretly slipped a Bodhi seed bracelet into my hand. This will protect us, you know. My sister said so. I smiled and accepted the bracelet. That was the last time I saw him. Now, looking at this bracelet, I thought back to the time many years ago when I was in love with Isabelle. I sighed. I packed the bracelet and sent it via a local courier to Isabelle. I also attached a sticky note. This is the Bodhi seed bracelet your brother gave me before his surgery. I know what it feels like to miss someone who has passed away, to receive something of theirs on a random day. You can't help but want to cry. You feel like they are still connected to this world. That's why I didn't throw this bracelet away. Local courier services are fast. Sent in the afternoon, it would arrive by evening. When Isabelle called, her tone was urgent. Larry Kane, how do you have that bracelet? I was silent for a moment. Your brother gave it to me before his transplant surgery. I hung up. Half an hour later, Mrs. Chun knocked on my door. Larry, Miss Reed is at the gate. I was taken aback. Isabelle Reed? Mrs. Chun nodded. I said, let her in. Go and get Frank. Mrs. Chun didn't leave from outside my room. Miss Reed said she's here to see you. And Frank isn't home. Mrs. Chun, just tell her I'm not home either. After Mrs. Chun left, I got a call from Isabelle. I rejected it once, she called again. When I answered, Isabelle's voice was hoarse. Larry Kane, let's meet. I grunted in agreement. Let's talk on the phone. She burst into the mansion, heedless of everything. I had no choice but to step out of my bedroom. Isabelle, what do you want to say? Her eyes were dark, the usual coldness gone. Her lips were a straight line as she spoke. 6 years ago, were you the one who donated bone marrow to my brother? I nodded. Yes. What is your conscience finally bothering you? Want to pay me back? I took out the good luck charm she had given me and cut it in half with a pair of scissors. Isabelle's eyes suddenly turned red. She knelt on the floor, desperately picking up the pieces. When she heard Larry answer yes, a wave of bitter regret surged from the bottom of Isabelle's heart. For so many years, she had been misled by Frank. At the time, Larry was completely covered up, with only his eyes visible. His build was not much different from Frank's. At school, she had met Frank first. She only knew the donor's last name was Kane. The doctors were unwilling to disclose more. She knew Frank was a son of the Kane family. Her friends said Frank had a good personality and was kind. He often fed the stray cats near the school. Isabelle found Frank. She thanked him. Thank you for donating bone marrow to my brother. Frank's expression froze for a moment. Then he smiled and said, you're welcome. According to her friends, Frank was kind. During a school field trip, she heard a student shout that the eldest son of the Kane family had fallen. Isabelle immediately rushed over. When she saw that the person who fell was Larry, not Frank, she breathed a sigh of relief. It was also at that moment that she learned the Kane family had 2 sons. Isabelle continued to inquire. Her best friend told her, oh, that's Larry Kane, your crush's stepbrother. He's stubborn and has to get whatever he wants. I heard he also bullies Frank a lot. After that, Larry started pursuing her. Knowing that Larry and Frank were not blood related and that he would bully Frank, she developed a dislike for Larry. She was afraid that Larry's pursuit would cause a misunderstanding with Frank. She was even more afraid that if Larry found out she liked Frank, he would secretly bully him at the Kane estate. Isabelle's voice trembled, slightly hoarse. Larry Kane, why didn't you tell me? Looking at her red-rimmed eyes, I said, Isabelle, you don't even know who donated bone marrow to your own brother, do you? You're pretty pathetic. Frank's not home. If there's nothing else, you can leave. I turned to go, but a pair of warm hands gripped my arm tightly. Let's get married. I shook her hand off and opened the security camera footage on my phone. I asked sarcastically, sister-in-law, does this look familiar? You don't hate me now? Go on and protect your precious Frank. Oh, by the way, since I'm the bad guy in your eyes, I don't mind playing the part to the end. In a few days, Frank can change his last name. There will only be one son of the Kane family, and that's me. She tried her best to hold back her sobs. Larry.
I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
My grandmother came out and pulled Isabelle away, persuading her earnestly. Little Isabelle, it's getting late. Hurry back home. Only then did Isabelle reluctantly let go in front of the old woman. Frank was very good at pretending. He seemed like a harmless little rabbit, but in reality, he made others believe I would bully him. Unconsciously, he had long since molded me into his opposite. My grandmother was furious when she found out that Frank had taken credit for my bone marrow donation. After my mother flew back from abroad, my grandmother tearfully complained to her. That's it. You're getting a divorce. My Kane family doesn't want a bloodline of unknown origin, and we certainly won't have someone who dares to slander my own grandson. That mother and son won't get a single penny from the Kane family. I'm telling you. On the day of my mother's divorce, Frank looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. He tried to act pitiful, but my mother just said coldly, "That's enough. I've been more than lenient with you and your mother. You don't have to act pitiful with me. I know who my real son is." The news spread like wildfire through our circle. Everyone knew that I was the only true son of the Kane family. I was preparing to fly abroad to study and then move on to the branch office. The day of the divorce, my mother cried in front of me for the first time. I thought they were honest people, and I thought I'd have a companion for life. But I neglected you, and I never expected the things they did behind my back. It was my fault. I'm so sorry. She spoke to me earnestly. When you go abroad, if you run into any trouble you can't solve, tell me. I nodded and said I knew. My grandmother said she wanted to go with me. She insisted on coming along. My grandmother felt that since I had lost my father at a young age, she didn't want me to be alone abroad. I agreed. The next time I saw Frank, he was in a scuffle with a woman. When I saw the woman's face, a chill ran down my spine. It was Frank's wife from my past life, Jenna. She was the one who ended my life with a knife to my throat. Jenna was considered a rich kid in the city, but her family was a far cry from the Kanes or the Reeds. Jenna roared, "You said you were a Kane, but you're just a fake. How dare you lie to me?" Seeing Jenna, I immediately turned and left the hospital. Frank pointed at me. It was him. It was his fault. He's the real son of the Kane family. If it weren't for him, my mom and I wouldn't have been kicked out. Jenna's face flushed with anger as she rushed towards me. The knife in her hand was the same as in my past life. I immediately ran outside. A surge of adrenaline and the will to survive helped me outpace her. Isabelle's car screeched to a halt, and she shoved me into the passenger seat. She walked towards Jenna, her eyes red. She grabbed the blade with her bare hands. Blood trickled out drop by drop. Jenna yanked the knife free. She stabbed towards Isabelle's heart. At the last second, Isabelle threw the knife into a storm drain. She subdued Jenna. After bystanders restrained Jenna, Isabelle collapsed. She looked at me and smiled. Her lips formed the words, "I finally saved you." Isabelle was rushed to the emergency room. She was unconscious for 3 days. Isabelle was the only daughter of the Reed family. Her mother cried until she fainted. Her father immediately hired a lawyer. My grandparents rushed over. My grandmother hugged me tightly. "Larry, if something happened to you, how could I face your father? How could I face you and your father?" My grandfather, who had always been serious and rarely smiled in my memory, also had red-rimmed eyes. I couldn't even imagine how heartbroken my grandparents and mother must have been in my past life after learning of my death. Isabelle was in a coma for a week. Just as she was about to be declared brain dead, she woke up. Her voice was weak as she asked, "Mom, where are my birthday gifts?" Her mother cried tears of joy. "They're all in the basement. What are you looking for? Mom will get it for you." Isabelle had a dream. She dreamed that Larry was dead. She dreamed that she had been reborn. When she came back, Larry had already rejected the marriage. She felt an inexplicable sense of unease and rushed to the hospital where Larry had died in her past life. There, she saw Jenna chasing Larry with a knife. Isabelle's mind went blank. Her heart pounded so hard she couldn't breathe. All the blood in her body rushed to one place. She pushed Larry into the car. She grabbed the knife from Jenna's hand, feeling the piercing pain in her palm until it went completely numb. She used all her strength to snatch the knife from Jenna and then fainted. During the days she was in a coma, she dreamed of her past and present lives in their entirety. She managed to force out a few words. A pair of cufflinks, with my name engraved on them. It was a birthday gift from Larry. Her mother immediately sent people to look, and personally searched all night but couldn't find them. Isabelle's eyes welled with tears. "Mom, I want to go home. I'll find them." "You won't be able to." Isabelle, still injured, searched for the cufflinks all night. She still couldn't find them. In her past life, Larry had confessed his love to her with those handmade cufflinks. She hadn't cherished them. Isabelle's mother called me. "Larry, I'm begging you. Can you please come over? The birthday gift you gave Isabelle, a pair of cufflinks, is missing. Isabelle has been looking for it nonstop." I sighed softly. "Auntie, I didn't give her a birthday gift this year." There was a sudden silence. "You don't have to look for them." By the time she called me, I was already at the airport. Isabelle rushed to the airport, still injured. She looked anxious and panicked. Her body trembled with fear. Our eyes met for a moment before I walked through the security gate. She was stopped by the staff. She shouted desperately, "Larry Kane." She knelt on the ground, her eyes red. She looked helpless and desolate. She tried to get up but fell back to the ground. After I flew abroad, I heard that Isabelle was still in the hospital. The Reed family sued Frank and Jenna. Jenna was sentenced to prison. I answered a call from an unknown number. I heard a familiar voice. "Larry, why can't I see your social feed anymore? And I can't call you either." I told her the truth. "I blocked you." The atmosphere turned cold. I hung up without hesitation. Isabelle was left with permanent injuries. Her heart was damaged, and she couldn't engage in physical activity. She would be confined to a wheelchair forever, partially paralyzed. Her hands trembled, unable to lift heavy objects. When it rained or got cold, a piercing pain would shoot through her hands and legs. I wonder which is more painful, that kind of pain or death. Isabelle's mother cried until her voice was hoarse, begging me to see Isabelle just once, but I refused every time. I didn't want to see her even one more time, and after my mother retired, I took over the Kane Corporation. Isabelle's story. In my past life, it was only after Larry died that I learned he was the one who had donated bone marrow to my brother. It wasn't Frank. Frank had misled me all along. He made me believe he was the donor, that Larry was cruel to him, bullying him every few days. By the time I knew the truth, it was too late. Larry was buried on the mountain, with his father and my brother. I sought out many Taoist priests. One said he could grant me another life in exchange for my own longevity and health. The price was that I might be left with a lifelong disability. Unable to die, living a life worse than death, never finding peace. I agreed. After being reborn, Larry was reborn too. But he came back earlier than I did. By the time I was reborn, he no longer loved me. He hated me so much that he didn't even want to see the things I had given him. He threw them all away. The watch I gave him for his birthday, he sold it secondhand. I saw it on Irene's wrist. Irene said she bought it from a secondhand luxury store. Only then did I finally accept that he would never want me again. In this life and the last, I am the one who owes him.